during those processes, we're going to use some adhesives, we're going to use some dyes. Of course, any of those, again, come in contact with the upper. After 5 weeks of work, getting it to here, that piece would be destroyed. It's a throwaway job. Okay? So, much care, much attention. So, to protect the uppers, just as we go around this, as you can see, we encase every pair of shoes in a plastic shrink film, just to offer that leather protection. Okay? And then we're ready to start making. So if you remember, our construction technique is called Goodyear welted. Yes. Very first
Why Goodyear?
Goodyear was the name of the gentleman. You know Goodyear tyres?
Yeah, that's
Same
why I was
family.
thinking Goodyear tyres.
Same family.
Yeah.
Wonderful engineers of their day.
What are these?
So these are worn customers' pairs come back for recycling.
Are they? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
And for every pair of shoes, we can get the production number and we'll know
This
exactly.
guy really went in. Clubbing. One heavy night out.
I think he went swimming too, but that's a whole other story. So the very first thing we're going to do in making is the attachment of a welt, and where the name Goodyear welting comes from. So a welt is a strip of leather, like this, okay, which will now get sewn through the welt itself in that little groove you can see on the back.
That's the welt. It's a groove.
Welt, yeah. Through the welt, through the upper, through the lining of the shoe, and into that rib. Right. Okay, and that's now locking all of this together. If you imagine this, now been shaped all the way around, stitched through.
Oh wow.
Okay, and we're now all locked in and permanently connected. Cool. Okay. Now the type of stitch that we use for this is called a chain stitch, which basically means if we actually cut one of these, we can unravel all the rest, which makes the repairing process possible. Okay. Later on, when we attach our sole, we use a lock stitch, which means even if a customer damages one inwear, actually each stitch is individually locked into place. So you can damage 1, 2, 3, 4, the sole's not going to come off. But for this allows this process to happen. Okay, so welting. Then, once we've done that, just never anything you want when you want it. Right, so. Into the bottom of the shoe, we place a product called a shank. Okay? Now, a shank's role in the shoemaking process is to stop the shoe being able to overflex in wear. The most damaging thing that happens to the upper leather are the creases that develop from natural motion of walking.
Right.
Okay? You want to prevent that happening as much as possible. Again, many other companies will buy their shanks made of metal. Very cheap, very easy to mass produce. But the only problem with a piece of metal is if you bend it, it stays bent. It has no memory, it has no ability to recover. So we buy our shanks made from the beech tree. And beech as a wood has great elasticity. So it's able to spring and then recover. And actually if I flex that, there you go, you see it spring back. And this one product alone will probably add 10 to 15 years life to the upper, because it's between every motion of walking. So as I bend my foot and then flatten it, the shank recovers and stretches my shoe back to that original shape, stop those creases developing. So a simple product, but great long-term benefit. One boring story I can give you is about 20 years ago, we bought some metal shanks because everyone in the world was using metal shanks. Come on, behind the times. After just a few days, once the shoes got out into the market, phone started to ring, something very different about your shoes. We're like, really? You know, what makes you say that? Said, well, do you know, for the first time ever wearing John Lobs, walking through airport security, beep, 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 because we put some metal in the bottom of the shoe. Our customers hated it. So from that day, not just for that reason, but we went straight back to wood. A little luxury detail. Yeah. Okay. After we place the shank into the bottom of the shoe, we need to put some product in there to build it up to a consistent height ready to place the sole. Because if we put it in there, it would fall into this cavity. Again, many other companies will use bits of foam or rubber, cut to the shape that you require, drop it in there, thank you very much, it's done. There is a big problem with that, in as much as our insoles are all natural leather. Okay, makes them much more comfortable to wear. But leather is actually naturally porous. It will absorb moisture from wearing the shoes for long periods of time. If you then place a membrane of rubber there, it will hit the wrap. It gets trapped. Basically, your shoes rot from the inside out. My shoes start to get very, very smelly very quickly. Bacteria grow. So to be better than that, what we do is fill the bottom of our shoe with tiny particles of cork. Okay, so the same as a wine bottle, crushed up into tiny particles, mixed with a resin to keep it bonded together. When the resins dry out, it creates tiny little pockets of air between the little particles of cork, which allows that moisture to get out and your shoes can breathe. It makes for a much more comfortable wearing experience. But another big advantage to that is that actually, okay, if you fill the cork, if you want to have a press, not too hard.
Wow. Oh yeah.
Okay,
Soft.
it's quite soft.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens when you wear John Love shoes? The weight of your foot presses on your insole, and your cork actually moulds exactly to the shape of your foot. So it almost, again, becomes like bespoke. Me and you were the same size, tried on my shoes to say, John Love shoes are really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's moulded exactly to the shape of my foot.
Yeah.
Makes for a very unique wearing experience. Right, so we leave that cork for 24 hours to set a little bit. Some of those solvents dry out of the resin, which are bonding it together. Then we're ready to place our soling. Okay, so the majority of our work is leather soling. It's the most beautiful sort of finish you can have on your shoes. So our soling will be a caster, which means, as you can see, it's about 5mm bigger than the overall shape we really want it to be. Then using this machine, what we will do is trim it more to the profile of the shape of the shoe, with a knife obviously cutting like this. But at the same time we have a second knife simultaneously cutting this way. So one going like this, one going like this, to create what we call a channel. I'll explain what that's for when we clean it. Okay, sir, over to you. I picked you up, it's your moment. To the shape of the shoe. Okay, so knife going that way. As I said, second knife now cut into the thickness of the leather sole to create what we call a channel. The purpose of the channel is now we need to attach our sole to our welt, lock it together. Again, when you do it, in many ways you can do it, and the easiest way is just to stitch directly on the surface. But of course, as soon as you wear that out in the street, that thread takes all the abrasion from the pavement, will rub down too quickly. So very cleverly, what we're going to do is expose within the thickness of the leather an exact point where we want our stitching to go, which locks our sole to our welt. And then when we've stitched it, we can cover it over with a flap of leather to protect that thread in wear.
Nice.
Okay?
Wow.
So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So we're going to push that flap back now. Little vibrating iron.
I won't be able to stitch it though.
No, I know, yeah. No worries. Little vibrating iron shaped to address that leather. Wow. Okay, hard to see with the human eye, but actually the knife is tapered, so actually it's a little bit thicker at the back where the stitching will set to give it its most protection.
Cool.
So when they're open, then onto these machines, which, if you imagine, are just like giant sewing machines designed to cope with that thickness of leather that it will now stitch through. Okay. Again, these machines, 60, 70 years old,
Wow.
they'll do the business. Okay, which will get us to here. So now we've stitched through that sole and into our welt, as you can see, with a line of stitching going around. Then when that's done, that flap of leather, we just need to secure to cover over our stitching that's now hidden within here. And for our customers, it almost looks like the sole was just glued into place rather than actually has been stitched. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Our shoe is to now attach a heel. Okay, so we buy heel blanks from two specialist companies, one local to Northampton, one in Italy. who make them to our exact shape specification and thickness. But there is one crucial detail you need with a heel to ensure it's the perfect match to the shoe you're making. And it's called cupping. Sorry, another strange name. But what cupping is the shape that it needs to be here to make sure that it A, matches the shape of the soling, because of course, however your cork filling settles and how your leather sole molds, that shape will be slightly different every time. But also there's a contact point of where, when the heel's sitting flat, you want the contact point to be with the weight of the foot in the shoe. Right. If it's too far forward, you just wear the leather, the toe away too quickly. If it's too far back, actually it'd be really uncomfortable to wear. So we take each heel individually and carve them into the exact shape that we require to ensure that it's a perfect fit. Right. Okay. Again, everyone else will have their cupping done by the heel maker.
Yeah.
But actually, if it's good, well, fantastic. But actually, more than 9 out of 10 will require some modification to ensure the fit is perfect. And again, you pay for that premium by having that luxury. Okay, so at this stage, the shoes will have been on the last. So from the very first stretch over in that corner to here for 5 days. So that bit would just walk around 5 days of work.
Right.
Okay. At this stage, we can now remove that last that will stretch the upper over. Okay. And our shoe should stand up perfectly as if that last is still inserted. And in fact, if you feel now the toe puff beautifully set and in shape, and that stiffener that we was talking about, that was really floppy wet leather, set, moulded, and we'll give that protection in wear.
Wow.
And then we move into what we call our finishing stage. So now this team is going to work on the appearance of the heel and the sole edge, get it ready for the marketplace, and the sole bottom. So all the cosmetic touches now makes it look perfect. So very first thing we're going to do, when we attach our heels, we use a very strong adhesive, but as we've already said, no glues will ever be permanent. So to make sure the heels can never come off in wear, these two machines just here are nailing machines which will drive nails down inside the shoe and down into the heel just to ensure it can never come away. And you can see a little set of 9 nails just in there. Okay. And then onto a variety of trimming machines and sanding machines, all about now perfecting the look of the heel and the sole edge. So basically what we've got is a cutting tool, similar to this, okay, which is a cylinder, 16 sets of teeth on it, revolves at 14,000 RPM, and basically you just address the leather to the cutting tool as it spins at high volume, and trim away, just remove the excess leather you don't want. Now, of all of our processes, it's the most dangerous for the shoes, of course, because of course, one slip on a cutting tool like that is going to cause more damage than could ever be acceptable. But also the most dangerous for the operatives, because of course, whatever comes in contact with that as it's spinning, it cuts. It doesn't care whether it's a shoe or
finger or
exactly. So really, really extensive, highly skilled work, really long training programs for people to get involved with this caliber of work. Okay. So trimming. Now, unfortunately for us, the way the cutting tool has to be made to cut around the heel, the teeth, I don't know if you can notice, the teeth are all offset, which means as it goes around the cylinder, they move over a little bit each section. And that's to allow the waste of the leather to be able to get out, so it doesn't clog the cutting tool up. But because of that, it actually means when you trim on the machine, you can actually see the marks from the cutting tool. So we can see there's like a line here, and it looks a little bit rough and unfinished.
Sure.
Okay. Which means we then have to go through 4 layers of sanding to make the heel leather perfect and ready for the market. And again, abrasive papers, if you can imagine, one slip there onto the upper, it's finished. And we're now talking about 7 weeks of work to get it here. But it doesn't happen, so all's good in the world. So after the sanding, get to a nice smooth finish like this. The forepart of the leather will be trimmed, but actually because of this thickness, we can actually have the tools designed in such a way with just the cutting tool, you don't need to do any extra sanding. So a little bit of a win, which will get us to here. So once that trimming's done, we can apply some colour to the heel and sole edge. Then using some friction, you bring the waxes within the dies to the surface, and that's a beautifully sort of finished, polished look onto the leather. Just a hard wax.
You put the hard wax on there.
Yeah, it can do. Can do. Depending on the types of materials you're working with, might require a little bit of extra wax. So that will get us to that. And in fact, one of the things you don't want to be doing.
What is this silver?
Metal tape is just there to offer a little bit of protection as we do that trimming and sanding.
Okay.
Interesting story. One of the guys that joined us about 10 years ago, he used to work for a company making windows, UPVC windows. This used to give me about 10 to 15 rejects per year, where people, one slight slip, mark the leather, is ruined. He said, when we used to package our windows, we used to put this little bit of aluminium foil tape around it to stop the plastic getting scuffed in transit. He said, maybe it would work. So we said, can you get us a roll? Yeah, I'll sort you out. Fantastic.
Wow.
And all the good ideas, of course, come from the operatives.
Right.
I've been on the factory floor myself for 15 years in my career here. You're the one most in touch how to fix faults, how to look at things. So we always encourage all our guys to come forward with the ideas that will help us with manufacturing.
Definitely.
Right, so once the edge is coloured, polished nicely, we need to deal with the sole. Now, as you can see, it's got its skin on the surface. If you started to wear that as it was, well, actually moisture from your foot get absorbed into the insole, out, down into the sole, and the skin, much like our own, will act as a barrier to stop that moisture getting out efficiently. It will happen, but it'll take a very long time. So what we're going to do on this sanding machine behind you is just remove the very surface of that skin to allow that leather to breathe and get moisture out more efficiently. You can actually scientifically measure it. It's about 0.4 of a millimetre. So it's like taking no goodness out of the sole, just opening the grain and allowing it to breathe.
Oh.
Okay.
Paul, you need to get a riddle on.
We're doing well, Steve. I have every confidence. Apply a finish. Actually, there's no real benefit to doing it because, of course, as soon as you wear that outside in the street, it's just going to rub that away.
Yeah.
But aesthetically, make it look beautiful. Show all the care, love, and attention that goes into making them. We'll finish them beautifully.
Nice.
Ready for the market.
Gorgeous.
Okay. That plastic shrink film we put on at the beginning, we can now remove because there's going to be no more sort of risk of any dyes, glues, and things coming in contact. So they come off in a shell, which we don't have one to show you, as you can imagine. Then into the final production stage, so we're nearly there.
Oh, right.
Which we call shoe room. So now this team would be working on the appearance of the upper. So that means applying creams and waxes to make it look beautiful, inserting what we call a seat sock, which will go over these nails and finish the inside of the shoe beautifully. Obviously, if it's a lace-up shoe, insertion of the lace. If it's a buckle-up shoe, clean it, dress it, close it, make sure everything's functioning properly. Okay, so that all goes on in this little section here, which will get us to something like this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now been beautifully creamed, beautifully polished, and you'll always notice with John Lobb shoes, we make a beautiful feature of the toe, beautiful feature at the back, but you might say, well, are you being lazy? Are you not doing something here?
I've noticed that.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Now there is a reason for that, not just laziness.
Right.
What it is that in any
I didn't
areas
think it
of
was
the...
lazy.
No, that's cool. Any areas of the shoe, what we call a working area, so things where it's going to move and flex in wear. If you build up this level of shine in those areas, what will happen is as this dries, it becomes very hard. But actually then, as you start to flex the shoe, that hard surface will crack. And people genuinely then think there's a problem with the leather. But all it is that high level of wax cracking.
Okay.
Okay. So
then you would
these
just want to
working
take
areas,
that off, would
exactly,
you?
exactly,
If you were at that.
exactly.
Okay.
If you did that. Okay. Right. So just one last stop off.
You're going to have to buy me tickets and get there. Oh, we've got return tickets. Ah, yeah, there's no stress. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Final examination. So our final opportunity to assess all the workmanship. As Steve mentioned earlier, we've got 70 production staff working on the shoes day in, day out. Even for our most simple styles, if we took an unlined shoe, there will be a minimum of 190 steps. You've seen a few.
Yeah.
So there's lots of little details going into there. Which means, of course, working with natural materials, 190 processes, 70 people doing things by hand. lots of opportunity to get things wrong.
Right.
But very well managed teams, very precise criteria and specifications that we put in place to control our quality. So we managed to make very good shoes most of the time. So final check, and then the very final thing, into packaging. So every pair of shoes comes with complimentary shoe bags. Fantastic when you're travelling. A little luxury care guide
Cute.
of how to look after your shoes, and you'll recognise these hands now. You say, "Oh, I've seen that guy."
Really?
I have to get all the credits I can. So yeah, it takes you through. And to be honest with you, aniline shoes are not for the faint-hearted. They require a lot of care to ensure that they perform well each and every time you wear it. Literally after every wear, you should do a little something to ensure they work to their best the next time you wear it. No, it takes just a couple of minutes. But yeah, exactly. You know, a lifetime of wear.
Exactly.
It's well worth it.
For sure.
But just to show the level of luxury, so even our care books.
So what should you do? Like look at it and give it a little like polish a bit,
The cream.
or
The most essential product you can buy to care for your shoes is a good shoe cream. Okay. Because it rehydrates and softens.
is there a John Lobb shoe cream?
Of course. Of course.
Nice.
And always buy one to match the colour of your shoes.
Oh,
People
yeah.
buy like a neutral, thinking I can put that on everything.
Yeah.
Black, brown, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Never do it.
Okay.
Never do it. Always buy cream that complement the leather. So black cream, brown cream, blue, green, whatever. But even our care books, hand stitched.
Nice.
Show a nice level of
Little
detail.
touch.
A gift for yourself.
Oh, cool.
Our Prestige line of shoes comes with complimentary shoe trees. Okay, so these are designed on the exact last that we originally stretched the shoe over. You slot them into your shoe after wear, stretches those creases out, and these are made from lime. And lime as a wood, very absorbent. So
Okay.
you put that in, helps to extract that moisture out of the leather, which again will add life to it.
Perfect. Wonderful. Awesome.
And that